Alright, 6 minutes to go, and we are streaming.
Yeah, it's really sad to see the divide, that this caused, and it's just humans are an interesting study.
That we are.
I stopped to see my mom aware this morning, and I said, this reminds me of like. These are the people 200 years ago I have, because I have epilepsy, so I have seizures, and these are the people who have stoned me to death, saying I was possessed with a demon. Not everybody, but the loud naysayers, you don't even take some time to kind of understand.
Alright, we got about 4 minutes.
4 minutes and counting.
And all the views I've set up seem to be fine. Our stream seems to be working just fine.
Good.
And we got one person in the chat room.
I also want to try to educate people on the laws surrounding, what people are going to do is going to be their personal business, but to save people time of really trying to change laws, this battle was fought 30 years ago, long before, anything ever came about. So if they want to spend time and money trying to get rid of us, that's their business, I guess, but I really don't foresee that happening, because there's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of these homes across the country, and if you close one, you gotta close them all, and no public official wants to be that person.
Yeah, the political element to it is an interesting thing.
Well, here's the deal. It's a wonderful, useful tool for government and insurance companies, because they don't have to pay for it, and so it's a safe, affordable outlet for people, even though they're not all going to come in and have 100% success. But the success rate is as effective as any other resource, especially when they're ran properly. And so, the government doesn't have to deal with it, insurance companies don't have to deal with it, and they love that because it's not costing them money. And at the end of the day, that's really what it is. And I agree with everybody. I wish that there were more avenues to generate funds to help people in a more suitable setting, but they're not. So. Let's see what else. I want to talk about big money. I'm a capitalist. I'm a passionist. Ending of the property value.
this one. Okay, everybody, we are getting ready to start this interview now. It's 1 o'clock, and I'm Norm Bauer, as I'm a Chapel East owner, homeowner, and a longtime resident. I've been there since 2002, and I think most everybody in the group knows me, but you know, those of you who live outside the group or the community do not know me. Mr. Jeremy Savin is here with me today, and he's given me his time to come and be interviewed and answer questions. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking. I'm just going to begin the interview. So, Mr. Savin, welcome.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Let's start off by talking about your story, okay? Where you come from,
Sure.
Childhood on up to maybe today.
Okay, absolutely. As Norm said, my name is Jeremy Savin, and I'm here today to try to put the community at ease and do my due diligence to answer any questions and make myself available should you guys have any additional questions, and hopefully form a relationship that works and is beneficial to all concerned. My story, I'm going to try to hit the highlights because there's a lot to it, but I grew up in a good family, a normal family, whatever normal is, but I felt love growing up. I have a mother and a father, grandparents, all that kind of stuff. I grew up playing Little League and going to Cub Scouts, and I wasn't destined to have the disease of addiction. And what happened was I tried marijuana at the age of 14 and drank around that same time, and you know, my body responded to those substances different than my friends, and it went from not being part of my life at all to becoming a big priority. And my friends changed, my hobbies changed, my habit changed, my attitude toward life changed, my respect towards authority changed. Mostly my parents at that time, they became the enemy. Anything that threatened my ability to use alcohol and drugs the way that I wanted to, and that grew from there. And didn't finish high school, started getting into trouble, and outside forces attempted to manage my life because I wasn't able to, and that continued to get worse as my progression with addiction grew. And around 18, I was arrested for the first time for stealing, and went to the county jail, Queen Anne's County. I grew up in Edgewater. My parents moved to Kent Island in 1995, as I was joking with Norm earlier, also known as South Glen Burnie, for you third-generation Eastern Shore folk. But we moved here in 95, and lived on Kent Island off and on since then. And in 1998, when I was 18, I got arrested for the first time, and I went to jail. And my parents certainly believed in tough love, and they said, "You got yourself in there, get yourself out." And that was meant completely with love, and I know that now. And after a few weeks, they did agree to get me out if I went straight into substance abuse treatment. And back then, when you said you were going into treatment, typically it was very long term. There was a lot more treatment opportunities, and I agreed to do that, and I went to treatment for 9 months. And I successfully completed that program. I would always do really well in structure, and once I got out of there, I went into a poor living situation and rented a room from guys that drink and smoke pot, and it was just a matter of time before I started doing those things again, and then it would progress into other substances, heroin, cocaine, really pretty much anything that would make me feel different. And because I didn't complete the outpatient component of that program, I went back to jail, and this time for a longer period of time, and then I finished up that time at Queen Anne's County Detention Center, and violated my probation for getting dirty urines and missing appointments and being non-compliant. And good old Judge South in Queen Anne's County gave me an 8-year sentence. I was 20. I went into the Division of Corrections, and I came home when I was 23. And still no recovery skills, really no clear-cut idea that I was bodily and mentally different than my fellows, and that I responded to substances differently, that I had a disease that when I put the first substance in me, that I respond differently and start a downward spiral. And so that went on for several years, and I had 3 lengthy incarcerations, all directly related to stealing for basically to feed my habit, and mostly B&Es. I would knock on your door, and if you weren't home, I would invite myself in and look for your change jar. And my last incarceration was a 5-year sentence, and it was for stealing $400 in quarters out of somebody's closet. And I'm not proud of those things. Certainly, I feel like I have paid my debt to society and some. And during that last incarceration, I really came to understand that I do suffer from a disease of addiction, and not only that, I recognized that just understanding that wasn't enough, that I needed to do something different. And I had a friend of mine who we grew up together, who had about a year sober in 12-step recovery, and I wrote him a letter during my last incarceration and said, how did you get sober? I need help. Can you please help me? And he did. He came to visit me every week while I was incarcerated and got me started in the 12-step process and showed me what 12-step recovery is all about and what recovery is about, and gave me hope that I could attain that. And seeing him attain it, knowing he suffered from addiction the same way that I did, was a powerful motivator for me. And he's still my sponsor today. I'm 11 years sober today, and he's actually celebrating 13 years sober tonight at our home group on Kent Island. So it's a pretty big day. So what happened for me during that last incarceration was I became willing to listen to somebody else. The judge released me early to go back to long-term treatment. I went to treatment actually at the same program for 7 months this time. Those are my only 2 experiences with treatment. Upon finishing that, I took the suggestion to go to a sober house, and went to the Oxford House of Annapolis, which was a beautiful house on Bestgate Road near the Annapolis Mall, next to the town apartment community of Harbor Gate. And I lived there for 7 months, and I met some great guys, and we became like a family. It was like a brotherhood. It was like a calm frat house for guys that don't drink. That's how I like to describe it, because we had a lot of fun, but we had a common purpose, and we held each other accountable, and for the most part we held each other to a standard. And a lot of us are still sober. People go on to start their own businesses, families, had kids, bought houses, and a lot of us have gone on to help a lot of other people. And I'm forever grateful for that opportunity. In my 11 years of sobriety, I think that was the key, most pivotal thing to help me get where I am today, and part of what inspired me to eventually do what I'm doing now. And
well, let's talk about what you're going to do now. What are your goals for Humble House?
Sure. Well, just before we get to that too, I just want to say kind of one other thing, is that Humble House is not my first experience working professionally with other people that suffer from substance abuse. I've been in this field for about 8 years, and I've worked in many different facets. I was a clinical counselor right here in Talbot County at the health department for a while. I've been a counselor at other programs. I've done some marketing, and I managed a treatment program for 3.5 years that had 400 clients. And so I'm pretty versed in working with these folks. It's not a new venture. So what I'm doing now with Humble House, what my hopes for Humble House are, is that I can replicate what I had at the Oxford House and create a good, safe sober, structured, happy, healthy atmosphere for guys that are serious about recovery and wanting to change their life, and are demonstrating that in their actions. And folks that need a safe place to go while they do that, because that's a crucial part of recidivism and the relapse factor, is that treatment is great, but if it's not followed up with anything, it's almost always unsuccessful. And a big part of that is structured, sober, safe living. And so that's what inspired me to do that. And I left that career at that treatment program a little over a year ago, and kind of been on the fence on doing this and taking the risks that go along with it, purchasing the home, putting my life savings into it. And I had to sit down with my parents, who've been very supportive, and they agreed to co-sign and loan me some additional money to make this purchase, and really have had my back 100% on this. And so it's a new venture. It's all me. It's all my back. It's a little bit scary, and but it's been a dream for a long time. So I'm excited, and I hope in time some of you folks will also share that excitement. And I also understand the fears that go along with it. And
along those lines of the fears that go along with it,
sure.
Most of us have never been around a sober home to know much about it. Can you tell us a bit about what's a day in the life of somebody who lives at a sober house like, from the time they wake up until the time they go to bed?
Sure, absolutely, and I'll walk through the intake process as well on how they would get there. So typically, most people come referred to me through a third party, and that could be the health department, it could be a treatment center, it could be somebody coming out of the local jail. Could be any number of places, or sometimes somebody just gets my number. So they call me. There's a general screening process and certain things that I would ask that determine whether or not they're appropriate, whether or not they're stable, and can we help them best, or should I make a referral to an organization that might be more effective. And some of the things that would disqualify them is if they're still actively using. I would help them get into treatment, and then they could come to me. So they are tested when they come in. They have to be abstinent from all substances and have a clean urine. Sometimes exceptions are made for, like, say, marijuana or some of the things that might be in your system long term. Marijuana can stay in your system for 30 or even 45 days sometimes, and so we cut people slack there. But certainly any substances like heroin or cocaine that are more aggressive are out of your system in typically 7 days, and so we hold a firm line on that. Other disqualification, if they have open warrants, we don't harbor a fugitive, and we do a Maryland case search. I can't do a full criminal background check across the United States, but we do a Maryland check on Maryland case search. And so no warrants, and also no sex offenders. So if they have any kind of past history with pedophilia or any kind of sex-related offense, that we're not the appropriate care for somebody like that. Even if they suffer from substance abuse, it's just not something that we're going to invite into our program. Once they're there, they would meet with me. Typically, I try to arrange an intake around my schedule so that I can meet the person and spend some time one-on-one with them and walk them into the house, explain the rules. I have 7 pages of rules, pretty detailed, that I composed and had the help from other providers that have been doing this longer than me. So I have them read through that. They have to sign that they understand and agree to these rules and agree to follow these rules, and that they recognize and understand that I can throw them out for breaking any number of these rules at any given time. And so once they are in and settled, we have the first place that somebody would go is into what I call the dorm. It's the biggest room in the house, and it has 2 bunk beds. And that's to minimize isolation and allow the new person to kind of get to know other folks, and also for them to kind of keep an eye on each other, and for it to be a privilege for them to get to a 2-man room, or maybe even to eventually to the single room. And in the rules, if they come in and they're unemployed, typically Monday through Friday they have to go out of the house by 9, and from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. and go out into the community, look for a job, go to the library, fill out applications, volunteer somewhere if somebody was to, have be on disability or something like that where they can't work, they have to volunteer. You can't just, it's not a flop house, you can't come in and just lay around and do nothing.
Who follows up on that?
I do.
You do?
I do, and or the house manager. I'm there, currently I'm there 50 hours a week and available by phone. And so for the most part, I reinforce all of these things. But so they would wake up, make their bed, straighten up their area, go to work, or go out of the house and look for work. Come back around 3 or whenever they get off, have their dinner, make whatever they're gonna have for dinner, and at some point throughout the day they have to go to a 12-step meeting. That was part of why I chose Easton, because Easton is, first of all, it's a wonderful town, it's a safe town, it's a great place for somebody to live, and also to live in early recovery. It's not the kind of place where you walk down the street and you get offered drugs, and oftentimes it's a challenge because a lot of people kind of think that's where these houses should be, but it's not really conducive to the purpose of the house, and I was not going to create that type of program. But part of why I selected Easton is Easton has a wonderful 12-step community. We have Dover Street here, which is a AA clubhouse where Intergroup is sort of like a centralized office that has a phone that is on 24 hours a day for somebody who might be struggling with alcoholism. They can call to these local offices and they would refer somebody like myself or somebody who's sober in 12-step recovery to go out and see that person or just talk to them on the phone or whatever they might need to help them with their problem. And there's a lot of other great meetings in this community as well, and all pretty much within walking distance or a bike ride from the community, from Chapel East or really anywhere. Easton's a small town, and there's a lot of opportunity for individuals that are getting a fresh start that don't have a vehicle. And there is some basic public transport as well that you can work with. So they have to go to a meeting every day. They have 2 days a week. We have structured chores, so everybody has a chore that's assigned to them, and they have to sign off on each other's chores. So if your job is to clean the kitchen, you clean the kitchen, and then I would go, hey Norm, come check out the kitchen, make sure I did it right, and sign me off. And the house manager or myself follow up and double check that and make sure that the house was cleaned up properly. So we keep a tight house. We want to keep a clean living space, and also a lot of that is designed, one, to keep the house nice, and then also for the individuals, some of them coming in maybe haven't developed some of these life skills. They're learning how to cook. They're learning that you make your bed in the morning. They're learning how to have a daily schedule. They're learning how to clean up behind themselves because they don't have mommy anymore. Any number of life skills that maybe people who end up living in a sober living home haven't quite developed yet. And I know when I lived in the Oxford house, I remember one thing in particular was I had never cooked a baked potato on my own. And I remember having a conversation with my mom and calling her and saying, hey Ma, how do I cook a baked potato? And it was embarrassing, but I didn't know. It's just one of those things where you kind of got to learn it, and learning how to do your own laundry and fold it and hang your clothes up, and the things that a lot of us, we grow up and we learn and become independent, and we take for granted, or we just it comes natural. So that's a typical day for an individual. They have a curfew. When they come in, you're on what's considered 30-day curfew. You have to be in by 10 during the week and midnight on the weekends. After 30 days, if they've been compliant and they've been following the rules and doing what they're supposed to do, then that gets extended to 11 o'clock during the week and 1 in the morning on the weekend. They can also earn the privilege of like overnights to go be with their spouse or partner or family, or really whatever they want to do. That's their business. They do have to excuse me, upon returning from that overnight, they know going out that when they come back, they have to take a voluntary urinalysis, and then they have to pay for that urinalysis, which is $10. I also do urinalysis. We have a weekly house meeting on Mondays, typically Mondays. Currently, it's at 6 o'clock, and what we do there is kind of go through the week, talk about, you know, house business, have introductions for the new guys, and urines are also done at my cost during that time. And what we do is we draw names out of a hat to keep it random. So if there's 10 guys, we might do 3 or sometimes 4 a week, about a third of the population at any given time on a random basis. Also, anytime there's any out of character behavior, if somebody's showing signs that they have used or are actively under the influence, if they get an immediate urine, and the house manager is aware that he can do that at any given time. Also, any 2 clients can do it at any given time. If you have just one another person, talk to the person and say, you know, look, we need to get a urinalysis from you. You look like you're under the influence. And then at that point, if they test positive, they would call me. I would either come to the house if I'm not there, or speak to the person and try to come up with an effective game plan on how we can remove them from the house, but also do that in an effective way. And so far that hasn't happened. It will happen. It's just the nature of what we do. And when that happens, I know some of the questions that I just saw recently, when that happens, it could go any number of ways. The person could call a loved one to come get them, and then they go wherever they go. They could call a loved one for them to pay for a hotel room at the Marriott or any number of the hotels that are in walking distance. Or sometimes they may just leave and walk down the street and come back and get their stuff later. And I know that's not an answer that you guys want to hear, but I equate that to when my mother threw me out of the house. And I was in active addiction, and we had a family home, and it was a good home, and my behavior was not good in that home. And she said, "You're not going to bring that here, and get out." And that happened on more than one occasion, and it was the right thing for her to do. But it also put a person under the influence out on the street. And, you know, so that's how I would kind of relate that. And that's a last resort thing. I will take every measure to find them. You know, I don't want anybody sleeping outside. But my first concern is the safety of the guys in the house. Right. And, you know, my concern is also for the well-being of the individual and the community. My experience has been that when these types of things occur, there's a lot of shame and guilt, and typically the person is not going to go out and pillage or cause harm or rob houses or hurt anybody. They're more often than not, they're just going to go quietly and hopefully the next day recognize the mistake they made and attempt to get more services. But, you know, we really don't know sometimes how that's going to end up.
Well, let's talk about the people that come into the house.
Sure.
And you said they come from different programs. Are they local or mostly local, or are they people that come in, say, from the Western Shore or even out of state?
Not the Western Shore. No, I'm just kidding. You know, it could really vary. There's no rhyme or reason to it. I am rekindling my relationship with Talbot County Health Department from when I worked there. They've been to the house, they've toured the house, and they're aware of what I'm doing and hope to work with me once my certification comes through. Currently, the state's not issuing the certifications. Everything is on hold. I think they have an overflow. That should be happening soon. A lot of individuals will be coming through. My feeling moving forward is that a lot of individuals will come from the shore.
Okay.
Not necessarily Talbot County, but I have a relationship. Yeah, I have a relationship with somebody in Kent County. I have 2 people there from Kent County now. I have one person that just came from Dorchester County that came to me through Talbot County Health Department. How he ended up to be in Easton, I'm not totally sure. He wanted a fresh start and thought jumping towns would help him have that. But they could really come from anywhere as long as they meet criteria and they don't have any of those disqualifiers, and we think we can help them and we're the appropriate place for them. We would accept them. And maybe they stay in Easton and build a life. Maybe they stay here long enough to feel secure in their sobriety and move back to where they're from, or transition to a situation closer to wherever they intend to rebuild their life long term.
Well, it's been said about the heroin addicts in particular, but and drug addicts in general too, that there's a high rate for relapse. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Relapse does not have to be part of the recovery process. Relapse oftentimes is what occurs to help us admit to our innermost self that we do suffer from the disease of addiction. And, it is going to happen. And it's going to happen at Humble House, and it's going to happen to people who live down the street attempting sobriety. It happens when people come out of the best treatment centers in the world. And it's just the nature of the disease of addiction. My personal feeling and my personal experience is that people who come from treatment or wherever they're coming from into a sober living space, a good one, they triple their chances for success. So if statistics say that 1 in 10 leaving treatment will make it to a year of sobriety, my experience is 3 in 10 that go to a good, properly managed sober living home will make it to a year and or more sober. Those are low numbers, very low numbers, and it's the nature of the work that I do, and it's the nature of the disease of addiction. And part of that is because part of the process of learning that you need to do the work to stay sober comes through relapse. Similar to if you go to a gym but you don't do any of the work, you're not going to lose any of the weight or get those abs that you want. And I use that analogy a lot, that if you want recovery, you got to work for it. This isn't something that just gets handed to you. And that's what I coach these guys with, and that's what the structure of the house hopefully motivates them to do, and hopefully the culture in the house also they motivate each other. And when I lived in the Oxford House, we had the kind of crew that when somebody did something small that they weren't supposed to do, or talked about skipping a meeting, or any of these little type things, guys in the house would say, what are you doing? You need to go to a meeting, and we would hold each other accountable. And that's what I want here. And relapse is certainly going to happen, and it's a difficult thing, and there's no better solution. I mean, there's a lot of different treatment models, a lot of different sober houses out there, and statistically, the success rate is pretty similar across the board.
All right, so for you and your experience, what there are definitely failed sober houses. What specifically do you think is going to make Humble House a success?
Well, hopefully, my efforts cultivating a good culture, and then after that, the individuals in the house. It's all about culture, and in any kind of cohesive community. It's all about culture, and with everything that we've gone through with Chapel East the last 2 weeks, and the comments and the Facebook threads, that's a perfect example of the way that a culture of a community can shift when something happens. And I look at it as my job and the house manager's jobs and the senior member in the house responsibility is when something is happening in the house to shift that culture, we have to cut the hand to save the body. And I'm a big believer in that. The Oxford House I was in and Second Genesis, the treatment program that I went to, are zero tolerance, strong, firm programs where they operated the same way. And you know, when you get that poison out, the culture tends to kind of go back to the way it was, or even stronger for a period of time, because it's a reminder for the individuals there of how quickly things can change, and one poor choice can lead us back to somewhere where we don't want to go.
I agree. So I'm getting ready to open it up to the Q&A session, so I want to give you an opportunity to part with some closing thoughts before we do that.
I wrote down a couple of things that that I wanted to touch on. Again, I have a I don't say this arrogantly, but I have my share of experience personally and then also professionally, working with a lot of different people from all walks of life. And I've worked with doctors, I've worked with lawyers, I've worked with people who are homeless. I've seen, we have a saying in the treatment world, Yale to jail, Park Place to park bench. Addiction doesn't discriminate. And I want to add also that a lot of the comments, when you go into this line of work, especially when you become independent and work for yourself to create your own organization, you often hear, and this isn't my first time hearing it, but you often hear that they're all about the money. And I work really hard. My phone rings all the time. I spend extra time on the phone with loved ones, with individuals, and I take calls at 1 in the morning, at 3 in the morning, and not necessarily associated with Humble House, because Humble House is a new endeavor, but in past experiences. And I take the lives of others, and I take sobriety very serious. And whatever salary I make, I earn every penny. And with Humble House, especially because I've created it and I've invested a lot into it, money, time, sweat, rebuilding that place, making improvements so the guys have a great place to live. And I want individuals, when they walk into the house, to have the wow factor and to look around and say, boy, this place is really nice. And then after they've been for a little bit, I want them to feel that wow factor and say, wow, this person, these guys, they really care. I like it here. And, that house and the space that men are living in is nicer than the house that I live in. And I don't say that lightly. I share a split foyer. My grandfather lives in the basement, and my girlfriend and I live upstairs, and we have 2 bedrooms, and we have a roommate in the other one. And that's great. I'm happy. But I don't live in a gated community, and I'm not sitting back counting my money. I'd like to, I do count it because I got to pay bills just like everybody else, and the stack's not as big as you guys keep saying it is. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well. So I'm happy to move to the questions.
All right, so we're getting ready to start the user question portion of it. We had one come in that said there wasn't a person in the forum who doesn't support addicts getting help. We've all been affected by addiction. Unfortunately, the statistics aren't good for rehabilitation. My gripe is that the neighborhoods are not the place for this. What resources are available in this neighborhood as far as support goes? Wouldn't they be better suited in town? And there are plenty of houses in for sale that puts everything in walking distance for these people. Let's not forget that most of these people aren't from Easton and don't know the area. So what do you say to that?
I can understand where you guys are coming from. The town of Easton is very small. You can ride a bike all the way across it in about 20 minutes. And so everything is really in walking distance. Being in Chapel East, it's a little bit farther, but there's a crosswalk there. They can catch rails or trails. And I would agree that being in town might be more ideal. However, in town seems to be a very kind of fine line, and I home shop for quite some time. I'm very familiar with the real estate market in Easton, and in town, to provide the kind of house that I wanted to provide would have costed a lot more than I could have afforded. And there's plenty of houses that were under $200,000 that are not the kind of house that I want my men to live in. And you know, that, I guess that was the biggest deciding factor. I was very close to putting a contract in on another house over by Public Works off of Glenwood that backed up to the water, but it was 120 years old, and my dad said, I'm not getting involved in this mess with you, and without my parents' help, I wasn't going to be able to do this. So I would agree. You know, the tough thing about all this is there's no perfect location, and you know, people, and no disrespect, I'm not saying these are your thoughts, but I do know and am aware that most people really think that these types of houses should be in the area where the crime and drug use and the area that nobody cares that it's there, like that kind of area. And that's not conducive to the mission. That's not conducive to what I do. If they can walk out the street and buy drugs, or when they walk up to the store, they got two people that say, hey, where are you headed? You know, I got what you need over here. That's not the kind of area that I want the house to be in. And I put a lot of careful consideration into where this house would go. Also, inside my own resources. If I was a capitalist and had unlimited funds, I may have been able to do things a little bit differently. But Chapel East is a wonderful neighborhood. It's within walking distance. Also, the part of the recovery model is to work together, so it encourages them to utilize phone numbers and reach out to other people in the recovery community and say, can I ride to a meeting with you tonight, which allows them the opportunity to forge new relationships, because they have to actually make that call and they have to ride with that person. And I know firsthand how intimidating it is to call somebody you don't even know and say, could you please give me a ride to a meeting tonight, and then to ride in the car with them to that meeting and feel that complete awkwardness of being with a stranger, making yourself vulnerable and asking for help. And you know, so that's a factor as well. Also, Chapel East doesn't have a homeowners association, and there's really not anything that restricted me from you know, doing what we want to do there. You know, so there was a lot of factors involved.
Okay, well, we have another question to come in, and the question is, let me read it here. Why did he lie to the former owner about why he wanted to buy the house? He told them it was so close, it was so he could be closer to his family.
That's not a lie. As I've said already in this interview, my parents live on Kent Island, and my girlfriend's entire family lives in Easton. Her parents, her brother, her sister, and brother-in-law all live in Easton. And my hope is that if this house is successful in time, that I will be able to move back to the Eastern Shore. I don't want to move back to Kent Island. I want to move to either Talbot County or Dorchester County. My parents are going to be moving to Talbot County when my father retires, most likely in the next year or two. They've been talking about that a lot, and so this is not a short-term thing. This is a long-term thing. I know some of y'all probably don't want to hear that, but you know, my intention is to build this organization and to grow my reputation here in Talbot County as well as throughout the Eastern Shore, and to grow with my services and to build a revenue stream so that eventually I can move down here and have a income source as well as an organization that I built. So when I told Mr. Brazington that the reason I was buying the house was to be closer to family, I spend a lot of time in Easton. My girlfriend's in Easton quite a bit. We see her family. I stop to see my parents all the time, going to and from Kent Island. And so, and then the long-term picture that I'll just reiterate is that, you know, I hope to eventually be in the position to buy another house and live here, maybe in Chapel East.
Well, I think that was all the questions we had that came in. So I'm sorry I didn't have more questions for you. I want to thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
For coming
I
by.
appreciate you working with me and having an open mind.
My pleasure. I'd like to give everybody a chance to speak and to hear all sides of the story. And certainly everybody's got an opinion on the matter. There's, nobody I've met that's kind of either in the middle of the road, one way or the other.
And I would, if it's okay, I'd also like to add a big thank you to Norm and also a lot of the other individuals that did approach this with an open mind, and even especially those of you who were supportive. I received quite a few private messages. One from a 16-year-old that I woke up to and brought me to tears. And she is gonna go places in life because her mindset is just really amazing for somebody who's 16. I couldn't even begin to fathom that at that age. And I have an open invitation to anybody, any given time, that wants to call me and ask more questions. I would love to meet some of you we could have coffee, or whatever the situation is. I'm an open book. My phone's always on, and certainly I know at some point down the road, somebody in this neighborhood, and one of you who are watching this, is going to have somebody that that suffers from addiction that's going to need help. And I hope that at that point in time, if that is the case, you can feel like you can call me and I can help you with resources, even if they're not going to be coming into the humble house. I'm happy to help. So.
All right. Well, thank you very much.